I will start the presentation now. The presentation today will be on, um, we're going to talk about eviction, uh, what the protections from eviction are for non-payment of rent due to COVID, and then what actions and steps people should take. Okay, so let me share now. Let me put this in slideshow view. All right, so one thing about SAJE that I didn't mention, I was waiting for the slides to come up, is that we offer a tenant action clinic. Basically, this clinic right now is being held 100% virtual, but next week we're having a conversation about bringing this back in person. So pre-COVID, every Tuesday, like clockwork, every week, from 4 to 7, we would have a walk-in, first come, first served basis tenant action clinic where we would give a presentation about tenant rights and then healthy home practices, and then shout out any campaign that was currently being was currently recruiting members, and then we would split off and assign each tenant to a fellow organizer or fellow staff member at SAGE. We still have the tenant action clinic, but it's held virtual right now. So anybody who's having a problem, any tenant who's having a problem with their neighbor or their landlord, or received an eviction notice, or thinks they received an illegal rent increase, whatever the matter may be, if it's a housing issue, they can call us at this number at 213-745-9961, or they can also email us. Someone will eventually get back to them, collect very general information, and then assign their case to one of the staff. That staff person will then follow up and do a thorough intake over the phone, assess the situation, and then give suggested next steps. So I just wanted to highlight that this is what we're known for out in the community, is our tenant action clinic, and we will be bringing this back in person very soon. All right, so on the agenda today is what is an eviction? Oh, and let me just highlight that this is a bilingual presentation. You might have already noticed that on the first slide. Just focus on the bold orange text that's in English. You're welcome to read the Spanish in the white text, but the English text will all be in this bold orange color. So we'll discuss today what is an eviction, eviction protections for COVID-19 related unpaid rent. We'll talk about the new assembly bill that was just passed, 2179, and what that means for tenants. And then we'll talk about resources as well. So what is an eviction? An eviction is a process of dispossession or repossession, and it could be achieved formally or informally, enacted usually by landlords against tenants. And so at the bottom, we have a table which makes a distinction between a formal and informal eviction. So a formal eviction is more like a UD, as we call it in the community, or which stands for unlawful detainer. It's basically a court eviction. It's when you as a tenant get, when you receive a summons, when you get served in person, a summons. It's a packet of about 10 pages stapled together, and it's cut, and it says summons on the top. It also could be a eviction. It could be an eviction filed by an agency like LAHD, which stands for the Los Angeles Housing Department. It could be a no-fault eviction, such as the Ellis Act. The Ellis Act is it gives the right. It's a law that was passed that gives the right to landlords to demolish their old building in hopes of constructing like a new building, which usually would turn into like a luxury condo, or simply just a brand new apartment complex with more apartments in it. Unfortunately, landlords do have the right to do that, so as long as they follow the laws and get permission from the LA Housing Department. Informal eviction would look more like the the landlord uh, calling you on the phone or coming to your door and offering you cash for keys, saying, "Hey, you know what? Writing you perhaps a letter." Usually, they'd like to do it verbal because they don't want to be held accountable for anything in writing. But we've seen offers on paper that say, "Hey, I'll give you 20,000 if you can leave in 2 months." So that's more of an informal eviction. The eviction process is a step-by-step process. We get a lot of tenants who they receive either a 3-day or 15-day notice to pay or quit, or to pay or vacate, or simply just to vacate. Um, 30-day notices, 60-day notices. People, rightfully so, they start freaking out, right? They think that they have 3 days to get all their belongings out of their home. That's not the case. So there's a process, and we'll go over that now. So a tenant receives a 3 or 15 or 30 or 60 or a 90-day notice to vacate. That would be the first step that the landlord would have to enact in order to evict. If whatever the violation, or maybe it's pay or vacate, pay or quit, whatever it may be, if the tenant does not cure, that's the legal term, cure the problem, or the violation, then what comes after, and this is totally up to the landlord, if they want to do this, because it also costs them money and it costs them time. Uh, they their next step would be to initiate a court eviction. So you have an example in front of you where it says summons on the top of the page, and it's about 10 pages behind this first page, and it'll have on the top left corner the court where they went to go file and register this unlawful detainer. The landlord then has the responsibility to not only file, but get the filing approved, and then to properly serve the tenant. So a proper serve looks like someone over the age of 18, someone that's not the landlord. It may look like a third party hire person, so just this third party person that has nothing to do with this issue, that comes to the door, asks for the tenant. The tenant either is the one who opened the door or shows up to the door and then properly hands over this packet and says, "You have been served." Which then, at the date of being served, the tenant then has 5 court days. I mentioned court days because the court, you have to think about the court and when it's open and when it's not. It's not open on the weekends, so it doesn't count weekends, and it's not open on federal holidays, so federal holidays don't count. This wasn't the case before. The case before was you just have 5 days, period. So it would rob the tenant from, it would take time away from them, and they had to scramble around and figure out how are they going to file an answer or respond to the summons when the court is closed. So that's not the case anymore. It's 5 court days. They have to answer. It's really bad when the tenant does not answer a summons from the court. Now we'll get into that just right now. Okay, so what if the tenant does not respond? So here's the process. So the landlord will then move forward and file a request to enter default, and then a judgment will be made by the judge. Usually 99.9% it will be entered in the favor of the landlord, which then will allow for the tenant to receive a 5-day eviction notice from the sheriff, which then in that case, it's almost impossible to revert uh, any decision previously made, and it's almost impossible for the tenant to stay in their home. Within the 5 days, the sheriff will come by, And they, unfortunately, they do have the authority to change the locks. They have the authority to evict the tenant. Uh, what if the tenant does respond? What if the tenant does file an answer within 5 court days? Well, here's what happens. The tenant receives in the mail settlement meeting notification with a trial date, right? They have to mark their calendars to make sure that they, work their school, their personal, their work schedule around this date. They have to attend this trial date. I believe, in some exceptions, if someone gets sick uh, or has an emergency, I believe they can ask for an extension. Um, and they would have to contact the court help desk to get information on how to do that. They show up to the trial date. Um, it's very important that the tenant shows up with a lawyer. If the tenant does not show up with the lawyer and the landlord shows up with their lawyers, most likely the tenant is going to lose. We've seen it time and time after again that judgment usually rules in favor of the landlord. However, when a tenant does show up with a lawyer, they have a good chance to rebuttal or dismiss some of the claims that the landlord is making. So it'll go either two ways. So the judgment will either go in favor of the tenant, which best case scenario, the tenant is not evicted and they can stay in their home, or the judgment will go in favor of the landlord, which then will automatically trigger that 5-day notice from the sheriff, and then the tenant has 5 days to move out. So now let's talk about this pandemic, right? We're still in it. It's over 2 years now. It turned all of our worlds upside down. It changed things forever. Lots of people have lost their jobs. Lots of people quit their jobs. Lots of people died. Lots of people, in general, all of this caused for economic hardships. A lot of people got behind on the rent. So the state of California said, we've got to do something. We've got to help out and help those who were affected by COVID. Doesn't mean that you got COVID and got sick with COVID. It just means the industry, the line of work that you worked in, was impacted. The company you worked for the last 20 years closed because it didn't make it. Or you got COVID and you were hospitalized for 2 months, or your partner got COVID, or someone in your family passed away, et cetera, et cetera. So the state said, we have to come up with some money and give some money away to people who were impacted and couldn't pay their rent. And this money is not it's not concerned. It's not considered you have to pay this back. So I just wanted to make that clear, because a lot of tenants say, well, I don't want to ask for this help because I'm going to have to pay it back. No, you don't. It's for you. And I actually would, I know tax season is almost the deadline is almost here, but I would consult with a tax expert to find out if it's considered earned income. I do not think so, but just confirm with the tax expert. This emergency rental assistance covered only a certain amount of time. So it only covered any unpaid COVID-19 related rent from April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2022. So it just ended, like the help just ended last month. What if you were served with a court eviction? Well, the good side, the bright side of this is that, or the good news is that, if this court eviction is for any unpaid rent, for any of the months that the tenant applied for rental assistance for, then that is their major defense to dismiss this court eviction. The tenant is going to say, here's my proof, my application is still pending, or here's my proof, I was awarded, I was approved by the state for these months, which some of these months or all of these months are included in your court eviction. So that that court eviction will be dismissed by a judge at the hearing for sure. Um, the state was super overwhelmed with all the people who applied. They were short on staff. They gave money to organizations like SAJE to even help out with helping people fill out their applications. So they're really backed up. So um, as I mentioned a little bit ago, the window to apply for rental assistance just ended. So people were able to get their applications in even as late as far in as March 31st. What is it, April 12th, April 14th today? So that application will still take another 2 or 3 months just to find out were they approved or not. Um, People who applied um, and yeah, people who applied should be very diligent and very consistent in checking their inbox, checking their spam or junk folders to see if there's anything that is missing. Is the state what is the state saying? Is your application pending? Are you missing documents? If you are missing documents, you need to get those in right away. And the number here, down here, 833-687-0967, is the best number to call to find out when is my deadline, because it's a case-by-case basis. I helped a tenant on Monday whose deadline was April 12th to get missing documents in. And unfortunately, because I personally helped this tenant fill out his application, unfortunately, it wasn't an error on our part. It was an error on the state's part. The state accidentally erased some of his documents. They don't know where those documents went. So we were lucky enough that I was available. He was available. He was on top of it. The tenant was on top of it. Saw this message, and we quickly got those uploaded those documents in there. All right, a little bit more about, well, now let's get into protections, right? We talked about the emergency rental assistance program, what it covered, uh, what to do, be proactive, be patient. They're still processing applications, and how to use it as a protection, as a defense, if you're served with an eviction from court. All right, so this laws came into play. Laws came into play by the state, and it makes it really confusing. So I try to summarize as much as possible, but this takes a couple of reviews to really get it. So um, let's just kind of go over it really quickly. Eviction protections for COVID-19 related unpaid rent. It's broken down into 3 time zones, unfortunately. Um, if you didn't pay rent due to COVID-19, if you could not pay rent between March 1st, 2020 and August 31st, all you had to do to protect yourself from an eviction was to submit a COVID-19 related financial distress form, or AKA declaration letter, to your landlord, just like letting them know, like, hey, I'm not paying you the rent because I don't want to. I'm paying you the rent because I don't have it. I've been impacted by the pandemic. Let's move to the middle time zone, the next timeline. If you could not pay rent um, due to COVID between September 1st, 2020 and September 30th, 2021, not only did you have to submit a financial distress form or a declaration letter, but you also had to pay 25% of your rent along with it. So if your rent, let's say, to keep it simple, $1,000, you had to pay at least $250 in order to be protected from an eviction. Now, if you couldn't pay rent between October 1st, 2021 through up to March 30th, 2022, you cannot be evicted for non-payment of rent unless your landlord filed a declaration stating that a rental assistance application was denied, because unfortunately a lot of tenants did get denied, or they filed a declaration that it's been 20 days or more since the tenant submitted a rental assistance application, or since the tenant was served with a 3-day notice to pay or quit, and the landlord has yet to hear from the tenant. that they either applied for rental assistance or that they um, were denied, or just hearing back from the tenant, like, did they get my notice? What are you going to do? Um, and the tenant can also and the tenant cannot be evicted for non-paying of rent, also unless the tenant on moved in on or after October 1st, 2021. So I know this is a lot to be like, okay, did I check off those boxes? Did I check this box off? Did I check that? It's a lot to kind of be on top of. So that's why SAJE is there. We know this. We have the tenant action clinic, and I'll be sharing that information with y'all in the last slide. Let's talk about Assembly Bill 2179. This greatly affects. It's going to affect, and it has already started to affect a lot of tenants. This was just passed, I believe, in the last 2 weeks. It's brand new, so we've been scrambling to kind of get to know this and get it under our belt, secured enough so that we can understand what it's going to do and how it impacts tenants. And so, what this bill does is it was written intending to protect tenants from eviction if they submitted a rent assistance application by March 31st, 2022. Okay. So if a tenant submitted a rental assistance application by March 31st, 2022, they are protected from eviction while their application is pending, or up through June 30th. So a little bit ago, I mentioned how the state staff, the people, the department of the state who is processing these applications, they're backed up. These applications are taking 3 to 4 to 5 months to process and to verify, and then to come up with an answer of yes, you qualify, or no, you don't, or hey, we need more documents from you, you're missing something. So this state law protects any tenant who submitted a rental assistance application by the deadline, by March 31st, and it protects you from an eviction while you're still waiting to hear back, or up until June 30th. However, this bill does not protect tenants who fail to submit a rent relief application. Unfortunately, we have had tenants contact us and say, I missed the deadline, what can I do? There's nothing that we can do. There's nothing that any lawyer can do. It's unfortunate. The bad thing about this law, okay, here it is. So what about, I'm a tenant, I still am backed up. I'm still behind. I still haven't been able to catch up, but I need help for April, May, and June. I need help for these months, but I couldn't request these months on my rental assistance application. It would only went up to March. What do I do? So, unfortunately, and this is what we really didn't like about this law. Unfortunately, landlords can serve any tenant except if you live in the city of LA and in other jurisdictions. Landlords can serve tenants a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit, meaning pay rent or get out for the April 22 rent or and beyond. Now it's really tricky. So when a tenant, tenants will have questions for me at these webinars all the time. This is my situation. Can my landlord really be doing this? Can my landlord do this? Can they do that? It always goes back to, where do you live? What is your address? Because I need to look it up, because the address will tell me exactly what your protections and what your rights are. So I made slides for City of LA, County, and unincorporated counties. So let's start here with the City of LA, because AB 2179 did not preempt the local protections that City of LA tenants already had prior to this law coming into effect. So AB 2179 does not preempt the City of LA eviction moratorium. So if you are a tenant and your address is City of LA, Los Angeles, California, your landlord cannot evict you for non-payment of rent if you claim COVID hardship. Okay, so the ordinance that was put in by Eric Garcetti, our mayor, states that you are protected from non-payment of rent evictions, and that you have 12 months after the end of the ordinance to pay that rent debt. When does this ordinance end? Well, that is until we publicly hear in the news that our mayor has lifted the ordinance, but we don't have a date yet. Um, but here's what we tell tenants: if in the city of LA, if you can pay the rent for April, May, or June, pay it. Pay it with a cashier's check, pay it with a money order, write in the memo section what exactly it's for, write your full name, write your full address, your unit number, and write the month and the year that this rent is for. Tenants always ask me, well, what if I could pay the 50%? Pay 50%, but please indicate that it's 50%, it's this amount of this total amount, and the rest of the information. So if tenants can pay something, I say always pay it, because it shows a judge your willingness to pay. It takes off that debt. Like later, it's not debt that's accumulating and becoming bigger and growing bigger and bigger later down the line. So it could protect. It could be another layer of protection for the tenant. Okay, what about LA County tenants? For LA County tenants, AB 2179 prevents the county from protecting tenants who cannot pay rent for April, May, or June. So unfortunately, LA County tenants who are not in the city of LA should pay April, May, and June, because they will be evicted. AB 2179 overrides the county protections. The good news, though, is that the county non-payment protections will restart again on July 1st. This is the part that we hate, because it's like, it doesn't make sense. This law should not have come in and overwritten any previous local ordinance protections for tenants. It should not have done that. It did. It did away with the county, not with the city protection, which we're lucky, but it did away with the county protection. But the county protections come back and are going to be reestablished July 1st. So as of July 1st through December of this year, if tenants in LA County, not in LA City, but in LA County, could not pay rent due to COVID-19 related hardships, then they will be protected from an eviction. This is all over the place. LA County tenant protections do restrict some evictions. That was for unpaid rent due to the COVID-19 hardship. But LA County tenants are still protected from being evicted for nuisance, being evicted for unauthorized occupants, having unauthorized pets that weren't originally part of the lease but that came on board that are now in the household due to COVID-19, or telling a landlord, no, you cannot come in to my unit because COVID. So those protections still remain. But when it comes to unpaid rent, it does not cover. LA County tenants are not protected at all for April, May, and June. So they can figure out how to pay the rent for April, May, and June. They should pay it to avoid a 3-day notice, which when you saw earlier, which will then trigger a court eviction summons. Okay, what about unincorporated LA County tenants? Unincorporated, there's a lot of unincorporated areas in LA. What that means is that these are areas, little islands throughout LA County that do not have their own city hall. They don't have their own mayor, like, for example, East LA, Florence Firestone. There's a lot of little incorporated small little areas that they're not part of the city of LA, and they're not incorporated. They don't have their own city hall. So what about these folks? Well, if you live in unincorporated LA County, or any city for that matter, that is not LA, that is not Pasadena, that is not Maywood, that is not Beverly Hills, you can be evicted for non-payment of rent from April 1st through June 30th. So what actions can you take? Well, for starters, if you're on social media, please follow Stay Housed LA, follow RTC Los Angeles, follow Keep LA Housed. They're really good at providing updates on real-time updates on policies regarding renters' rights. If you receive a notice, right away, immediately request legal help and attend a webinar from stayhousedla.org. If you receive a summons, a court eviction, you have 5 days to file an answer. So please respond, file an answer, contact the court, contact the help desk. A lot of courts have help desks that have resources that will file an answer for the tenant if the tenant qualifies as low income. We tell tenants all the time, do not self-evict, stay put, stay in your home. And also, it's really important to get involved in politics. This is all political. All of this it's business and it's political, and it's about money, and it's about people in suits and ties making decisions that greatly affect you. So call your state assembly member, your senator, call your board of supervisor, and also join others like yourselves by joining Keep LA House, the Keep LA House campaign, and by sharing your story. And all of these resources as far as what's my assembly member's phone number, you can Google that, or you can call us at SAJE. How do I join SAJE, or how do I join the Keep LA House campaign? That information also we have at SAJE. Some more resources here. There's Housing is Key. It's the state agency that is processing the applications for unpaid rent, for rental assistance. There's there's Law Help California, a legal resource for tenants. There's Eviction Self-Help, and then there's also a Tenant Power Toolkit. And then lastly, SAJE, we have that Tenant Action Clinic that I was talking to you all about at the beginning of the presentation. So again, here's our phone number and our email, and we're happy to help. And yeah, we've been, these last 2 years have been extremely busy. We're hiring more people. During the pandemic, just to give you an idea, we doubled in our staff, our number. We went from like 12, we went from a small group of 12 staff to 24. We've been lucky enough to get resources thrown our way. SAJE is known in the community. They know what we do. So because of the work, we've been receiving a lot of money, a lot of resources. So we're hiring more people to help us do this work. And with that, I'll stop and take some questions or hear some comments if anybody wants to share.
First off, wow, amazing. This is, amazing. I wish everything happens in due time, I believe, but thank you so much, Kery. Very amazing presentation. Hopefully we could get a copy to share with our teams. My question really is, because I do have teams across LA County as the county, not the city, are there similar or counterparts to this really great strategic support or process teaming that you have through SAJE in other areas? One in particular I'm thinking about is the greater Long Beach area, our service area.
Yeah, SAJE only has one office. Unfortunately, maybe that'll be maybe on our vision board in the near future of like how do we spread SAJE across LA County, because that's what we noticed, right? Like Long Beach, not even off the top of my head can I tell you who's out in Long Beach. I can tell you that there is, unfortunately, but yet fortunately, because LA City is huge, but a lot of the tenant resources or the tenant advocates or the tenant rights organizations, they're all condensed in LA City. There's Inner City Law Center, LA. There's SAJE is in LA. There's also Housing Rights Center, Los Angeles. Yeah, I can maybe do some research if you don't mind dropping your email in the chat, and I can find out who's out there. But that is why, actually, this is why we had a tenant from San Diego call us. We have people, when we were pre-COVID and we're having this in person, we have people driving from Santa Ana all the way to LA. We have people driving from Santa Clarita, Newhall, driving all the way into LA, into the office. So doing this virtually kind of helped alleviate that, right? We take it over the phone, easy, okay. You don't have to drive, and the gas is ridiculously expensive. So, yeah, I see your email. Thank you. So I'll look it up, and then I'll see who's out there.
Yeah, and even with your commentary, I'm glad I asked the question because it sounds like you're just in that LA region, though you can service and support um, folks outside of the LA. Because I know your presentation was primarily on the laws and the support, and then the process for Los Angeles, the city, and the unincorporated areas. Though it sounds like you would be able to support someone that lives in like the greater Long Beach area, and I'm thinking like Gardena, Wilmington, San Pedro, I mean Long Beach, in those areas, it's just that they would need to contact your office, and but you guys would be able to support, I guess is the question then also.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. No, anybody within LA County. Now, when it's San Bernardino County, when it's Ventura County, when it's we've had people from Ventura also come down to our office. Um, when it's other counties, we're not as informed and up to date with what's going on as we are within LA County. Yeah, Long Beach, Wilmington, Torrance, all of that, LA County.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so they can call us. But as far as is there something closer? Like we're gonna go back into person really soon, like next month. So we probably won't be taking calls anymore, unfortunately. So can a person from Long Beach come down? Sure. But it would be better if someone in Long Beach could just go to an agency, walk into an agency in Long Beach, and that's where I'm going to do some research and see if I can find anything for you and send it your way. That way, when if and when we go back and when we go back in person, not if, but when we go back in person, someone doesn't have to make the drive from Long Beach to
Yeah,
South LA, even though it's not too
yeah.
far per se, but it's still yeah.
I think distance wise, it's just the traffic because I commuted to right by Temple and Alvarado from the greater Long Beach area yesterday. And it's just the traffic that really keeps us apart. But if we had more of like
Yeah.
this commuter, friendly system in place. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. So one last thing, because I know I'm taking a lot of your time
Oh,
is
I'm on that, but I'm not really listening. I'm you know what I'm doing.
Can everyone
Laurel,
mute themselves if they're not talking? Thank you.
Oh, no.
Michelle, could you mute yourself?
Kery, hi, sorry. One last thing.
No, he's
Yeah.
not. Well, he was with a
Okay, perfect. If ever you would be interested, we do have the opportunity and the availability in terms of our offices. If you would like to partner and come into our region, we would be more than happy to give you some space. We have a brand new office opening up in the Watts region, which is Spa 6, right across from Ted Watkins Park. And it's right next door to the being renovated Kaiser Permanente that's apparently going to be quite high. And we're also across the street in Long Beach from the Long Beach Unified School District area. It's a little bit more business-like, but let's connect if you have, it sounds like you're hiring and have funds. We have space. Again, one of the pros and cons to the pandemic, we are opening up our doors to community providers, and we are strategically planning ways, like for example, in our Spot 6 area, the Gang Task Force Unit has an office at our Watts campus. They have a meeting room and everything that we've set up for them. But if you would be interested, I would love to talk more about some other ways to potentially partner, but I don't want to take up too much more time. And honestly, the whoever other community partners are in here, it's all really open to everybody. We are looking to enhance more community support, and with the pandemic, and our teams are primarily hybrid, remote. Our buildings are pretty open at this time, so we'll see how it goes. But thank you, Kery. I don't want to dominate the time, but I'm just like so excited about your organization. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll follow up.
Yeah, it's really, and I'm so happy to see so much enthusiasm. Great questions, Grace, and great opportunity to connect with each other. That's what this referrals work group is all about. Kery, one question, actually two questions. One is, what day of the week is this workshop offered? You said 4 to 7 once a week.
That was pre-COVID.
Okay.
That was pre-COVID. So right now, since we're not back in person, folks should just refer to our phone number.
Okay.
Here, let me put SAJE Action, Tenant Action Clinic, and drop it in the chat, or email us, and then someone will get back to them, collect just general information, assign the case to one of our staff, and then that staff person will follow up and ask a bunch of questions and do a more thorough intake over the phone and assess their situation and give some suggested next steps.
Great. And you mentioned, so you're not, you're going back to having these in person soon.
Yeah, like maybe end of next month or mid-month next month. Yeah.
Is there any thought to having sort of a doing it on Zoom and in person simultaneously for people who are living further away or who have transportation issues?
Yeah, that ideally would be nice, but we're also having an internal like accountability um, issue where we've been seeing staff not contacting tenants in a timely manner. And so we're thinking, are we doing too much? Talk to your supervisor, take a break from taking cases.
Okay.
No one's really speaking up. And so I think then there's staff that lives far away from the SAJE office and they prefer to stay at home, but we want to make it fair for everybody. So we're right now, no, we did consider that having hybrid. But right now, because of the internal issues that are arising, and it's hard working from home too, when you're dealing with tenants, when you're used to being face to face, and then all the resources that we have, they're in paper form. So some of us are good at emailing tenants. Some tenants don't have email. So how do you get an email who's computer illiterate, who's elder, disabled, cannot leave their bed? Manic depressant, a manic depressed, and then how do you get them this form to fill out, like a notice to repair form? So there's all these issues that come up. So, but mostly internally, I oversee the entire clinic, so we've tried everything, and I think it comes down to we need to be fair. I'm pushing for having everybody come back into the office. For special cases like that, elder cannot get out of bed, disabled, cannot drive, that I will consider, but on a case-by-case basis. But I don't want to open the option. I need all my staff to come back in person. That's just hands down what we need to do.
I wasn't really referring to the staff. I was more referring to the tenants who are trying to get support. But you're saying for both, mostly it's going to be in person.
Well, that applies to tenants, right? Okay. So if what I could do is we're going to talk. We have a meeting next Wednesday to talk about this. So what I can bring up, and this was already in the back of my head, was we have a program specialist who screens all the calls, where she's the first person that anybody talks to when they call SAJE. And I can train her, and we can maybe use like an assessment sheet to assess whether the person will just not be able to come into the office at all, will not be able to physically be there. And then maybe those cases can be assigned to me. But we don't want to promote and establish a hybrid model, is what I'm trying to say, because of the internal staff issues that we're having.
Okay.
Right? They're lagging on the cases. They're not getting back to them. I know they can do cases. I've seen them. I know. So it's all intertwined together. So what I want to answer your question, is that a possibility? Yes, but it'll be a very case by case basis, and I'll probably end up taking those cases because my turnaround is pretty quick. I get it done, and there will be no problems about why hasn't this person been called? Why is it taking so long? Yeah.
Thank you.
I see also Laurel said, can we distribute this number? Yes, you can distribute my number to anybody, home visitors, staff, family member, friends, allies. Yeah. And I'll just quickly drop in the chat again what I'm working on with the LAGWP project, the grant that we received.
Anybody else have any questions for Kery?
I don't have a question. I did just want to share if you have any upcoming events or advocacy opportunities, anything like that, you can share those, Anna or I, and we can make sure to get those out to the consortium. This is something that they all really care about too. So
Yeah, and I'll send you
spread the word.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll send you the LADWP flyer. So you could, it's a digital flyer. It's already ready to go. I'll email that to you once we get done with the
Yeah, if you could
webinar.
share that, and also your presentation slides, if that's okay, that would also be really helpful, especially since it's
yeah.
Spanish too.
Yeah, I saw that request. Yes, I can do that too.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. I know you guys came and did a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and we asked you to come back, and we really appreciate it.
Oh, you're really welcome. We're all working together to help folks, and be there for them. So I really appreciate what everybody here does as well. Yeah.
Thank you.